Au revoir. Okay, welcome to another episode of FitPet Boston Talks. My name is Leah and I'm the host of the show. And today is the second installment of the disc series that I am doing, and we are going to be talking about the throw. So last time we talked about the catch and the importance of the catch and improving your catch ratio in order to accumulate points if you are playing disc dog sports. And today we're going to talk a little bit about, or I'm going to talk a little bit about the throw. Before we get started, I just wanted to mention bettervet.com. Bettervet.com is your mobile veterinary service. They show up right to your door, and you can save $75 off of your first visit if you use the code FPB75. Also, if you want to sponsor or support the podcast, on the Instagram bio for the podcast at FPB Talks, I have a little tip jar set up. So you can pick whatever amount you'd like to leave if we have answered a question for you, or if you just enjoy listening and you want to shoot us a couple bucks. Very much appreciated. I have had a few people ask me, so I decided to put that up there. Thank you so much for listening. Wherever you are listening, if you subscribe, review, and share the podcast, it helps get out to more people. So please feel free to do that. We very much appreciate it. Okay, on to the discussion of the day. Talking about the throw as it pertains to disc or playing frisbee with your dog. So I've been playing disc with my dog for a couple of years. I've learned a lot along the way. I have had a coach help me out with my throw, also help me out understand my dog and his strengths and weaknesses, which has been very eye-opening. And the thing that I like to share with people right off the bat when they start to experiment with the sport is that if you cannot throw, your dog cannot catch. I know it sounds like a super simple statement, but when you see somebody who does not throw the frisbee well, you oftentimes hear a lot of, "Oh, I'm sorry, buddy. Mommy did a bad job. Oh, what am I doing?" after every single throw. And even though this is not the worst thing in the world, and if you're playing disc with your dog and you just want to play a game, it might not matter to you if your dog can catch or if you can throw. However, today we're talking about trying to improve our game so that we can compete in a sport like toss and fetch or up dog games. And the throw is pivotal. And there's a bunch of things that go into throwing a frisbee. I completely admit that a podcast is not going to be the place for you to develop your skills. The best way to develop your skills is to know the proper technique, to understand the mechanics of a disc, to understand and be able to read wind, and you have to practice a lot. So something that is kind of universally understood about learning a new skill is that you have to do 10,000 reps in order to become a master at it, or do 10,000 hours of practice before you become a master at whatever skill you are trying to achieve. And 10,000 throws of a frisbee, that's a lot of throws. And it takes that amount of time and that amount of practice in order for your body to get used to throwing the disc so that it becomes muscle memory. Okay, there's a big difference between having to think about what you're doing before you throw and having your body just understand the mechanics of what you're doing. So first I want to say, I see a lot of new people get obsessed with the actual disc. And there's no reason to be obsessed with the disc. Okay, so pick a disc, pick any disc, and just go. I know that there are different characteristics of every disc dog disc. The biggest one that's going to be a useful piece of information for you to know is that some discs are puncture resistant and some discs are not. And there's reasons for a puncture resistant disc and reasons for a lighter disc that's made out of harder plastic. So a lighter disc is not going to be puncture resistant. If you have a hard biting dog, they're probably going to put holes in that disc. But if you're competing in a sport like freestyle or a game with shorter throws and you want just kind of faster throws and you want a lighter disc, you would pick a freestyle disc. And if you're highly competitive, you're probably going to go through a lot of discs if your dog is hard biting. If your dog is hard biting and you want to get some life out of those discs, you can get the brand Hyperflight makes a disc called the Jaws disc, which I think is kind of universally understood as like, if you have a really hard biting dog, that disc is going to last the longest. If you go with the brand Hero disc, anything that they manufacture that has super in front of the model name, so Supersonic, Super Hero, Super Air, etc., or Super Aero, I think it's called, that disc is going to be Hero's version of a puncture-resistant disc. A puncture-resistant disc is going to be a little bit heavier. So just pick something that it's going to be comfortable in your hand, that you're comfortable with the price point, that your dog can, that can catch, but you can get some life out of it. Like, for example, I can practice with Ruben with a hard disc. He has a relatively soft mouth, so I can get a lot of life. The disc that I like to use with him is the Hero Extra Distance or the Hero Air disc. And, I'm lucky in that way, I guess, because he doesn't burn through discs. I do have to throw them away occasionally because if you play a lot with them, they do get kind of pock marks in them and I have to throw them away. But the moral of the story here is that it is the archer, not the arrow, when it comes to throwing a disc. And if you put a disc in someone's hand and that person understands how to throw a disc, it doesn't matter what model disc dog disc you give them, they're going to be able to throw that thing. So pick a disc, go with it, and try new things as you get better and as your understanding of how the disc flies becomes a little bit more comprehensive. So first of all, we have to talk about technique. Again, technique is a tough thing to talk about because it's a podcast. I'm not there, and playing disc is a very tactile, physical thing. But the technique behind throwing a backhanded throw, which is the only throw I'm going to talk about today, is that the speed of your arm and the snap of your wrist is what creates all the momentum and the spin on your disc. You have to wrap your mind around that concept. It's not your shoulders, it's not your hips, it's not your legs. It's the speed of your arm snapping your wrist to get that disc to spin in the air. Okay, so understanding that concept is going to take you far. If you don't understand that concept and you need a visual and you are at a club or somebody that can throw a disc, ask for help. Okay, like if you want me to help you out, send me some video. I'll let you know if it looks good or not. But the disc flies if there's momentum and if there is spin on the disc. The momentum comes from your arm. The spin comes from the snap of your wrist. Okay, the technique. You can throw 20, 25 yards without moving your hips or your legs at all. Okay, you could actually do that if you were like kneeling down on your knees. And when I work with people for the first time, sometimes I actually have them do that just so that they can see that the distance and the technique is not coming from the lower part of their body. That foundation of the snap of the wrist and the arm speed is what's going to get them there. And then we can add all that other stuff later. And one of the most humbling things the person that was coaching me said was, people work for years on trying to get their distance throw, trying to get that throw where they're throwing 40, 50, 60 yards. And unless you're a natural, unless it just naturally comes to you that you can, throw the disc, maybe did it as a kid, maybe played ultimate frisbee, those long distance throws really take a long time to master. But the cool thing is, no matter what disc sport you're playing, you can accumulate points pretty much 10 yards plus. So you don't have to get on the line and throw the disc as far as you possibly can, because you're not going to be able to throw the disc as far as 50 yards if you don't throw the disc 50 yards in practice. So anything that you practice is probably what's going to show up on the field. So the temptation to get up to the line and throw the disc as far as possible is really high. But you have to just perform as you practice. And then as you get better at practicing, you can start adding distance, adding a little bit more pressure to yourself and to your dog to accumulate the maximum amount of points. So the second thing about understanding how to throw the disc is understanding how the disc itself flies. So I'm going to kind of go off track for just a second. I was reading the other day about the Wright brothers. And the Wright brothers, as most people know, were the first people to man an aircraft for any length of time and have that aircraft fly in the air. I believe their first flight with an engine-powered plane was like a couple of minutes or something like that. And they worked really hard on perfecting the glider. So they would, jump kind of like off of a cliff and glide so that they could understand the aerodynamics of the plane. And the Wright brothers were not engineers. I believe that they didn't even graduate from high school. But they had this philosophy that it was the pilot of the plane that would allow for flight to take place. And that philosophy differentiated them from all the other engineers that were working at the exact same time. It was kind of like a race to get an aircraft into the air. The other engineers, who were really bright as well, had a lot of education and had a lot of money through grants from different organizations, they viewed the aircraft more like a boat. So they put a lot of emphasis on trying to stabilize the aircraft in the air, just like a boat is stable in the water. So if you're making a boat and you have the correct dimensions, it doesn't matter what type of water you put that boat in, the thing's going to float. So they were looking at the aircraft in that way without really understanding that even if the aircraft isn't, mechanically or if you're looking at the physics of all of it, perfect, the pilot is able to respond to different environmental factors, namely like the wind and different variables with air pressure. The pilot is able to respond to that and be successful. And the Wright brothers came from a bicycling background. So they were bike mechanics and they were designers, and they understood intimately that when you're riding a bike and you go to make a turn, your body is moving with the bike to get the bike to turn. If you're going into a headwind, you kind of crouch down to make yourself more aerodynamic. And they had a good understanding of the importance of the person that was manning the machine. So they were able to build their aircraft and fly their aircraft first. And the reason why I'm sharing this story is because the way I look at playing disc is that I'm the pilot of the disc. And it's my job to practice my throws so that my response in the moment is learned. My body understands what's going on. And also I can make adjustments based on the wind, based on mostly the weather, being the wind, okay? And be able to change my technique a little bit. I'd be able to change the way that I'm, approaching my throw to respond to what's going on in the environment. Okay, so mechanics of the disc are important to understand. How does a disc actually fly? A disc actually flies because when spin and momentum are put on the disc, there's an area of high pressure under the disc lifting it up and an area of low pressure above the disc, which allows for the disc to fly. As gravity pulls the disc back down and the spin gets slower, the disc begins to fall. Understanding the difference between a stable and an unstable disc is a really important concept if you are throwing a disc dog disc, because most disc dog discs are unstable. And when you throw an unstable disc, you have to change your technique. You have to change the angle of the throw. If you understand this type of stuff, when you start practicing your throw, it's like the light bulb goes off and you have an aha moment. Okay, this makes sense. So understanding the mechanics of what is actually happening with the Frisbee when you throw it in the air is really important. And then practicing your throw so that it becomes muscle memory. It's like the most important thing. And I can't tell you how many times I've gotten out into the field and thought to myself, oh yeah, I know how to do this. And then I video myself and I don't know how to do it. I can't tell you how many times I've been like, okay, keep your elbow high. I thought my elbow was high. I videotaped myself. My elbow's not high at all. So practicing and then reviewing what it is that you're actually doing. In my case, I do a lot of videoing myself. I put my phone on the selfie mode. I put it down by my Frisbee bag and I video myself. And sometimes if I can't see the field in the video, I'll go ahead and say, okay, that one fell to the right, or that one had too much, hyzer, or that one was perfect, or that was a little short, or, whatever, so that I have some feedback. And then when I'm looking at the video, I can say it makes a little bit more sense. But practicing away from your dog is the best way to develop your throw. Next little episode, I'm going to talk about practicing and the way that I practice, and hopefully give you some ideas for the way that you practice. Again, if you have any questions about this stuff, please let me know. The best thing to do is to find somebody that knows how to play disc really well and learn from that person, or you can use a resource. I'll give you a resource again that's really great. The person that helped me out a lot, her name is Andrea Rigler. She is a world champion freestyle competitor. She's an awesome person, super outgoing, very good teacher, good communicator, and she has put together a video series on teachable.com. If you go to BFF Pet Training Services, there's a whole module on learning disc. I've done the first module, watched it a bunch of times, and it was super, super helpful. So learn how the disc flies, get out there and practice. And next time we'll be talking about how to structure practice with your actual dog. Hope this was helpful. Signing off. You will hear from me next time.